Romeo and Juliet is not mainly a love story. It is a play where a rotten city burns through its own teenagers.
Yes, people shrink it into romance because that feels neat. But romance on its own does not explain the speed, the violence, or the pile of bad decisions that kill them.
So, the usual reading is too soft from the start.
Much too soft. If you call it just a tragic love story, you miss the machinery around the lovers. The feud matters. Public aggression matters. Adult failure matters. The play is about young people trying to act inside a world already rigged against them.
Start with the feud, because people treat that like wallpaper.
It is not wallpaper. The first scene is a street fight. Servants trade insults, men pull swords, and the prince has to step in because this has happened before. That tells you the setting immediately. Verona is unstable. Violence is normal.
And that changes how we read everything after it.
Exactly. Romeo does not fall in love in a peaceful world and then suffer bad luck. He falls in love inside a feud that turns every private choice into a public risk. Juliet is not just choosing a boy, she is crossing enemy lines.
Which means the relationship is under pressure before it even starts.
Right. The balcony scene gets sold as pure romance, but look at what they actually say. They are already talking about names, enemies, danger, secrecy. This is not two people floating above reality. Reality is in the scene, pressing on every line.
Then there is the speed. This play moves like a panic attack.
That is one of the main things people miss. The tragedy works because events happen far too fast for good judgment to catch up. They meet, they marry in secret, Tybalt kills Mercutio, Romeo kills Tybalt, Romeo is banished, and Juliet is pushed toward marriage with Paris almost at once.
So, speed is not just exciting plot, it is the cause of the disaster.
Yes, the characters keep making permanent choices in temporary states. Romeo jumps from Rosaline to Juliet almost overnight. Juliet has to make life-changing decisions in a house where delay means losing control of her own future. No one has room to think.
And when people do act, they act badly.
Constantly. Mercutio turns tension into performance and ends up dead. Tybalt treats honor like fuel and drives the conflict higher. Romeo tries to avoid fighting, then swings to revenge the second Mercutio dies. The play is full of people mistaking impulse for strength.
That matters because the deaths do not drop from the sky. They come from choices.
Exactly. Bad luck matters, but bad judgment matters more. Friar Lawrence backs a secret marriage to end a public feud, which is reckless. Then he hands Juliet a fake death plan because the first risky plan failed. That is not wisdom. That is desperate improvisation.
And the adults are supposed to be the stabilizing force.
Supposed to be, yes. In practice, they fail almost everywhere. Capulet looks flexible at first, then turns brutal when Juliet refuses Paris. Lady Capulet is cold and useless. The nurse helps the secret marriage, then tells Juliet to marry Paris anyway. The adults do not guide the young.
So, when people say the lovers are just reckless kids, that is only half the truth.
Exactly half. They are young and impulsive, yes, but the play does not simply sneer at youth. It shows youth trapped inside a social order built by older people who cannot govern their own violence, pride, or need for control.
You can see that in Capulet's house. Juliet says no, and suddenly the whole family system becomes coercion.
Yes. Once Capulet decides on Paris, Juliet stops being a daughter with feelings and becomes a problem to be managed. That is crucial. Her choices narrow fast. The potion plot is not romantic extremity for its own sake. It is what happens when every normal route is blocked.
And outside the house, the city is no better. The prince talks tough, but the violence keeps coming.
That is the wider failure. Authority exists, but it is weak. The prince can punish after the damage. He cannot stop the culture that keeps producing it. The feud survives laws, warnings, and dead bodies, right up until the corpses belong to the family's own children.
Which brings us back to the shallow romance reading. It cuts out the social cruelty.
It does. If you reduce the play to doomed love, you turn a violent civic failure into a sad Valentine card. Shakespeare is harsher than that. The lovers die, but the play is also asking what kind of society makes secrecy safer than honesty for its young.
And the answer is a bad one. A world where honor means aggression, parenting means control, and authority arrives late.
Yes, Romeo and Juliet are not destroyed by love. They are destroyed by the speed of youth colliding with a culture of violence and adults too weak, proud, or foolish to stop it.
So if you remember the play as two lovers with terrible luck, you are remembering the least interesting version of it.
The sharper reading is this. Romeo and Juliet is a play about a society so sick with conflict and bad judgment that it makes children carry consequences meant for adults.